Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. I hope you're all doing so well. Welcome back to another true crime and makeup episode. Today we have another Homicidal History. Today we are covering the case of Elizabeth Bathory, which was highly requested on my Vlad the Impaler video, which if you haven't watched, you absolutely should. I'll list it down below for you and also up here at some point in the video. But Elizabeth Bathory, she is known as the Blood Countess, and apparently, she would bathe in the blood of her murder victims. Not only would she bathe in the blood of her victims, but she would also drink their blood because she believed that this is what would keep her looking young and beautiful forever. She literally drank from the fountain of youth. It is said that Bathory was abusive to her servants. She would murder her servants, she would torture them. Just some really sick stuff, and apparently her husband was in it for a bit as well until he passed away. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you are subscribed to my channel with the notification bell on. Leave a like, comment, or please share, just so YouTube knows that you enjoy my videos and they will push my content out, hopefully. Any details you need are down below, as well as the products that I've used on my face today. They're all linked down below for you guys as well. I'm actually so excited to get into this one, so I'm not going to ramble too much, and I think we should just get into the case of Elizabeth Bathory, the Blood Countess. Let the record show that I am wearing a top. Also, just whilst I clean one of my dirty brushes from my previous video, I just need to address this. Vlad the Impaler, if you've not seen that video, I'll put it up here or up here. But Vlad the Impaler and Elizabeth Bathory, they would have been a perfect match in the worst way. But they would have been a perfect match. And I think, their passions, they really would have flourished with each other in the worst way possible. But I can't help but think they would have been quite a couple in history. Do you ever look at your face and you're like, something doesn't look right? But I think it's just my face. What's wrong with it? So Elizabeth Bathory, she was born on August the 7th of 1560 in near Bathe, Hungary. We're in Hungary today, and as we know, my pronunciation of places that are not in Scotland is pretty poor. So I have Googled and went on this pronunciation website. I think it's Let's Pronounce or something like that. And I have phonetically spelled out how to pronounce it, but I think I'm still going to say it wrong. But it is the thought that counts, and I am trying. Now, Elizabeth Bathory, let me tell you something. This girl, she knew privilege. Her and privilege went hand in hand. She had a mass amount of wealth. Her family were very prominent social figures. She had a very high social ranking. And also, she spent her childhood in Eched Castle. And Elizabeth's father, he was Baron George Bathory VI, and he came from the Eched branch of the family, and he was a brother of Andrew Bonaventura Bathory, who was a voivode, and he had been the voivode of Transylvania. This is the highest ranking official, and they're basically picked out by the monarchs. And then Elizabeth's mother, Baroness Anna Bathory. Now, she was a daughter of Stephen Bathory of Somleo. If you haven't noticed, Anna and George, they're keeping it in the family, if you know what I mean. Incestual. And although with great status comes great stress, it also comes great wealth, great respect, fear. Now, Elizabeth Bathory, she had multiple siblings, and her older brother Stephen, he had actually served as a Judge Royal of Hungary. As a young girl, Elizabeth, she learned multiple languages. She learned Latin, German, Hungarian, Greek, and she was said to be fluent in all four. We love a cultured queen. I could never. I had an app on my phone to learn Spanish, and I learned it for one night, learned how to order a tequila shot, and that was it. It was said that even though she grew up in a very privileged, wealthy environment, she also faced a lot of cruelty. In her, I was going to say her family home, but in her family castle. But anyway, apparently this cruelty that she faced would be a catalyst for the cruelty that she would go on to portray later in life, which I don't like excuses. Okay, so I sympathise for the cruelty she faced, but I'm not going to excuse her actions. And not only was Elizabeth Bathory a victim of, violence and abuse and brutality at a young age, She also witnessed it from a young age being dished out to the servants of the castle, the household. But she would witness the brutal beatings of many servants. This is something she grew up around, and at the age of 6 years old, she even witnessed an execution. Like, that's gonna you up, you know what I mean? That is not an easy thing to come back from. Like, no human being should be witnessing that, but no 6-year-old should be witnessing that. Now, as a young child, Elizabeth Bathory, she would suffer from multiple seizures, which was thought to have been epilepsy now, but back then, any symptoms that related to epilepsy today, that was diagnosed as falling sickness. There's no treatment for epilepsy back then, and when you have falling sickness, there were a few treatments, methods that you could try to recover, and in my opinion, they are a wee bit outlandish, but this is what they did. They would take the blood of a non-sufferer, so a non-epileptic. They would take their blood and smear it on the lips of the person having the seizures. In this case, Elizabeth Bathory. She was having, blood smeared all over her face. Now, the second option was to give the epileptic or the victim of fallen sickness, to give them a mix of the blood of a non-sufferer and also a piece of skull as their episode ended. Listen, I don't know whose skull it is, right? I don't know if it's the person who's also given the blood, but like, how they get in that. Is it the skull of a dead person? Is it the skull of an animal? Whose skull is it? I don't know, but it was a skull and blood mixed and given. Now, it is said that Elizabeth Bathory, apparently when she was 13 years old, she gave birth. That's right, this little girl is having a baby. But apparently she gave birth to a child, which I was like, oh my god, this is horrific, because obviously this little girl has been raped. That was not the part that annoyed or shocked anyone. People were annoyed and shocked by Elizabeth because she had given birth to a peasant baby. It's not the fact that it's like underage sex or rape, it's the fact that the baby was the baby of a peasant boy. That was not going to fly here. Now, of course, at this minuscule age of 13, Elizabeth Bathory is not married, okay, so this child is out of wedlock, which was heavily frowned upon. So her mum's panicking and she's thinking, oh my god, my 13-year-old daughter who has given birth to a peasant baby, this is not going to go down well, so let's sell the child. They had given the baby away to a local woman who was well trusted by the Bathorys, like out of sight, out of mind, never happened. And then this child was taken off to Wallachia. I wonder if she knew Vlad the Impaler. I will say that the subject of the baby did come up long after Elizabeth Bathory's death, and apparently it was like the peasant people spreading the rumour. So like, some people say it's not true, some people say it is, but most people say that the peasant people, they were spreading gossip. They were spreading vicious lies. I'm sorry, if you think gossip in this day and age is bad, take us back centuries, because the gossiping back then was even worse and even juicier. So in 1573, just 13 years old, right, a lot is popping off at the age of 13 for Elizabeth Bathory, but she would get engaged to a man. She would get engaged to Count Frank Nadasdy. A count. This is how she becomes the Countess. Now, Frank, he was part of the Nadasdy family, which was this huge aristocratic family that had roots that reached all the way back to the Middle Age. So they are a big deal. Now, the couple, they would get married 2 years later when Elizabeth Bathory was just 15 years old, and this marriage was not so much a marriage as it was a political arrangement within the aristocratic circle. Like, they only wanted their children to marry the best of the best. So like, if you've ever met like a mother-in-law that doesn't like you or a father-in-law that doesn't like you now, it was even worse back then. Now, Nadasdy, he was the son of a Hungarian nobleman who was known to be a great landowner and statesman. So getting back to their big special day, on May the 8th of 1575, Bathory and Nadasdy, they would get married at the Palace of Verona. Now, this marriage resulted in combined ownership of both Transylvania and the Kingdom of Hungary. So like, everyone's a winner. Now, as is tradition until this very day, it's quite normal for a groom to give his wife a gift on their wedding day. So, Frank, he's thinking, what can I get Elizabeth to show her just how much I love her and appreciate her? Do you want to know what he got her? Drum roll, please. A castle. He gave her a castle as her wedding gift. And this castle was Castle Cheddar. Listen, between Bathory and also Nada's Day, there's castles galore, right? So they have plenty of options. So Elizabeth's like, I want to keep my castle nice and clean and just like for me. So they decide that they're going to live at Nada's Day's castle at Sharvar. Why just have one castle when you can have two? Like have one each, obviously. Now, apparently, the Nada's Day castle, the atrocities were popping off in there. It's actually said that Frank Nazadeh, he was the one who introduced Elizabeth Bathory to the art of torture. Torturing, it's an art. Has to be learned. It is actually said that at some point, Nada's Day, he had a young girl restrained and like covered her in honey, like she was dripping in honey, which by the way is like my dad's worst fear. Like people are scared of spiders and stuff. His biggest fear is getting like honey poured down his neck and then being forced to do this and it like all sticking. Anyway, I digress. This girl, yeah, she was covered in honey and then they set insects on her to feast on her bare flesh. What? And apparently this was all for the pleasure of Elizabeth. Now, as we know with Nada's Day, he loves to give an extravagant gift, right? So the wedding present was a castle, and he's like, how am I going to top that for a woman like Elizabeth? Like, how can I really get her something that she wants? He gets her the perfect gift. Well, perfect for Elizabeth. I wouldn't be too happy, but each to their own. But he gets Elizabeth gloves that's like spiked with claws, and the reason for this is so she could thrash her servants whenever they made a mistake. Now, it wasn't just Nada's Day that was involved in this corruption with Elizabeth. Her Aunt Clara, you bad woman Clara, she was also heavily involved and she introduced Elizabeth to orgies in a circle of people that were sorcerers, witches and alchemists. Which, by the way, if you ever visit Scotland, go to the Alchemist Bar in Glasgow. It's really nice, you'll like it, great cocktails. So, in 1578, Nada's Day, he becomes the commander of the Hungarian troops and he would lead them to war against the Ottomans. And whilst he was leading these troops to war, Elizabeth, she was gonna, maintain business, BAU, and she was also looking after the multiple estates that were owned by the family. So although she was obviously having to manage business as well, in particular, the main thing was protecting the estates of her husband. Now, these estates, they lay sort of like on the route to Vienna and they were at a very high risk of attack. Now, the reason for this is because the village of Cheddar, that had already been attacked by the Ottomans and Sharvar was in even more danger. But also, like, low-key, what's he expecting one woman to do? Like, is she going to stand outside and be like, oh, sorry, you can't attack here. I'm on watch. No. Like, come on. Now, during this time, Elizabeth, she would also be responsible for the Hungarian and Slovakian people. And at first, it's all going well. She seems to be a natural born leader and she really has a knack for governing the local population. But she's not really. Because again, like I said, these people back then, they loved to gossip. So it wouldn't be long before Elizabeth Bathory was being accused of abusing, torturing and beating her servants and the people that she was supposed to be looking after. Even though this was quite well known, throughout the town, no one really looked at her because at the end of the day, she's kind of meant to be looking after us now and I don't really want to get on her wrong side. In 1585, Anna Nada's Day would be born to Nada's Day and Bathory and this would be their firstborn child. However, they would go on to have more children. I believe it was 4 that they had in total, so another 3 after Anna. All of these children, they would be appointed private tutors, which back then was known as governesses. That word that I'm trying to say. This was basically like a live-in nanny, apart from they were more there for teaching and helping the children learn. They weren't really much of the caring types, but Elizabeth wanted this for her children because that's what she had grown up. On January the 4th of 1604, Frank Nada's Day, he would pass away at just the age of 48 and he would pass away due to an unknown illness. Now, this illness had started around 1601, and by 1603 he was left completely disabled. It had all started with like a pain in his legs and progressively just got worse, rendered him disabled, and then ultimately killed him. And so after 29 years of marriage, I guess Nada's day is wanting to make sure that Elizabeth and his children, or as he referred to him, his heirs, he never really had much, paternal instinct. His heirs, he wanted them looked after, so he entrusted them into George Thurzo, and I am saying his name so bloody wrong. Is it like Georgi? I was going to say Georgi, but I doubt it. I don't know, maybe. And coincidentally, he was Bathory's cousin, but he will also be a very important name in this case. So remember it. So it is said with Elizabeth Bathory's murders, most of them would take place between 1590 and also 1610. Now, most of the murders would be committed after her husband's death. Now, at first, Elizabeth Bathory, she would target, young girls who were of the poorer class. She would target them. Now, she had lured them to her castle under the promise that they would get some servant work. Other daughters had actually been sent to Bathory's castle by their parents in order to be taught by Bathory about courtly etiquette. And let's just bear in mind, there is a whole bunch of rumours going around about this woman killing and torturing people, and yet the parents are sending the children off? Absolutely not. Bathory, she tried to promote herself as a very humble and helpful figure to the community, okay? But the rumours, they were getting even further spread. Like, these were widespread news now. Everyone had an idea of what was going on behind those castle walls. And it even got to a point where women were trying to keep their daughters, locked away and hid away from Bathory. Not only would Bathory kill daughters of the gentry throughout her murderous escalations, but she was abducting local girls in the area. Now, she was abducting them because she was like, well, no one wants to come to my castle anymore because of these rumours. And I wonder why, Elizabeth. So she just thought, if no one's going to come on their own accord, I'm just going to go out and take them back myself. Bathory is said to be one of the most horrific and prolific serial killers in history, and she was known to be monstrous and sadistic in nature. Not only would she want to kill these young women, but she wanted to torture them in the most heinous ways possible. She was evil. So Elizabeth Bathory, she would have many, many methods of torture. I mean, in some instances, she would beat the girls within an inch of their life or to death with clubs. She would burn or mutilate their hands in some kind of way, whatever one seemed to be getting the most pain from the girl. That's what she would do. She would often freeze or starve these girls to death as well. She wonders why she has no visitors at the castle when these rumours are flying around like an empty tracksuit. Remember how we discussed the fact that her husband restrained the girl, lathered her in honey and then put insects on her to feast on her flesh? Elizabeth Bathory, she would continue this after her sicko husband's death. These young girls were literally being eaten alive by insects. It's so disturbing. See, when you really think about it and you take a step back, if that truly happened to those young women, I cannot even imagine the pain and suffering involved in that. Another thing Elizabeth would do is she would take the victims and burn them with extremely hot tongs, and then as soon as she burned them, she would dip them in ice cold freezing water just to induce the most pain possible. She was even known for sewing her victims' lips together so they couldn't scream, they couldn't cry, they couldn't beg for help. And as it always seems to go in these cases, when you think it can't get any worse, it just does. Elizabeth Bathory, she would take needles and stick these into her victims' lips or any other sensitive body parts. She was also known to bite out chunks of their breast, their face, their limbs, whatever she could sink her teeth into. But one of her absolute favourite methods of torture was to stab and mutilate her victim's face and body with scissors. Now, these scissors, they were multi-purpose. She did a lot with these. She was able to cut off their hands, their noses, their genitals with a pair of scissors. I don't know if they were crafting scissors, right? I wasn't there. I'm assuming they were. Like, how can you actually cut off a hand with a pair of scissors? I will never ever look at scissors the same ever again. I know, like, we've said a lot of disgusting stuff, but the thing that makes my toes curl and like, oh, my teeth feel funny is the fact that she would use the scissors to slice the skin in between her victim's fingers. She would slice that open. I can't. For me, that's right up there with like slicing the Achilles. Ugh. Now, the thing that makes Elizabeth Bathory so infamous was her vampiric tendencies. Yeah, she was a vampire undercover, I'm telling you. Listen, right? Elizabeth Bathory, she was someone who really valued her beauty. She wanted to remain young and beautiful forever. And like, don't we all? Like, I almost went into catatonic shock when I found my first grey hair, but you don't see me murdering people or bathing in their blood, but we'll get there. So it is said that Elizabeth Bathory, she would drink the blood of her young victims who were virgins because she believed that this would lead to eternal youth. We put on cream, she drinks blood. She is literally drinking from the fountain of youth. And if you think that drinking the victim's blood isn't bad enough, Elizabeth Bathory used to bathe in the blood of these young girls because she believed, yet again, that this would keep her young and beautiful forever. And like, it got me thinking, low key, did Elizabeth Bathory invent the vampire facial? Could it be? Listen, the Bathory claims just get wild, right? People were actually claiming that she was a real-life vampire, not just acting like one, she was a real-life vampire. And other people claim that they seen Elizabeth Bathory have sex with the devil himself. They witnessed it. She was going all in on the devil. Now, it is said at this point, Elizabeth Bathory has killed up to 650 victims. And the rumours, they are just flying a bit like tumbleweed in the Wild West. It is crazy. Things are getting so, insane out there that the king's called in. So we've got King Matthias II. He calls in Georgi Thurzo. Remember him? Elizabeth's cousin. So he is called in to investigate. So he hires like 2 notaries to gather witness statements. And at first they're able to get like 52 witness statements. And then it goes up to like 300 witness statements, all against Elizabeth Bathory. Now, it is said that some of these statements, they might have been tortured out of some people. Okay, I'm not going to say that it was all legal. And then on the 30th of December 1609, Thurzo, he went to the Cheda Castle and he would arrest Bathory and 4 of her servants who were apparently accomplices to her murders. Now, apparently, whilst Thurzo was there, he had seen the dead body of a young woman who Bathory had killed, and then there was also another girl who was like hanging on for dear life. Some sources even claim that Elizabeth Bathory was caught in the act and that when Thurzo entered the castle, she was standing there covered in blood with the dead body. These are just, people saying stuff. And I will say that most sources do state that Elizabeth Bathory was actually having dinner at the time that she was arrested. So, believe what you want. The first one's more interesting, obviously, but it's probably been embellished. What I found absolutely crazy is that in 1611, the servants, they would be put on trial for the murders. 3 of these servants, they would be convicted of witchcraft and said to be executed / burnt at the stake for apparently partaking in these murders that Elizabeth Bathory was committing. Now, Elizabeth Bathory, she was spared the execution. They thought, do you know what, it's not in the best interest of the people that she be executed. Now, Thurzo, he had sort of like convinced King Matthias II that, if he executes a noble, this would damage the nobility, and the execution would also cause a public scandal as well, which they just did not want, because this trial, this scandal, that could really damage the reputation of an influential family in Transylvania. So what they did instead is Elizabeth Bathory, she was taken back to her castle, Castle Cheda, and she was bricked into one single room. Like, they bricked her in. There was nowhere she could go. I don't know how she got fed, because she actually survived there for 4 years before dying. Like, she would last in there for 4 years until 1614, when she would then pass away. But how were they getting her food? Like, there couldn't have been a window, because she might have escaped the window, unless it was like bars. unless they put like a prison door in this bricked up wall. I don't know, but it was basically like being in a prison cell, apart from it was a single room in the Cheddar Castle. Now I have to say, it is actually thought by many that Elizabeth Bathory didn't actually commit any crimes. She didn't bathe in blood, she didn't kill her servant, she didn't kill innocent people. People believe that King Matthias II actually owed her and her husband a huge amount of debt. So like, what was the best way to get rid of debt back then? Brick them up in their own house. And it is also said that King Matthias II might actually have been the person to start the rumours about Elizabeth Bathory. But I don't know. Listen, I don't want people to suffer, but obviously the first story is more interesting than that one. Who knows? What do you think? I am so interested to know like your thoughts, feelings and opinions on this case of Elizabeth Bathory, because if it's true, how bloody insane is that? And like, her and Vlad the Impaler, match made in hell. They kind of would have been perfect for each other in the worst way possible. But that is it for another episode of True Crime and Makeup, Homicidal History. I really hope you enjoyed this one. I love doing historical cases. I think they're so interesting. If there's any others that you would like me to cover, just leave them in the comments below or send them to my email and I'll add them to the big list that I've got. Remember that you can request just true crime cases, homicidal history cases, or homicide or haunting cases as well. If you enjoyed, please make sure that you are subscribed to my channel with the notification bell on so you don't miss when I upload every Wednesday and Sunday at 7:30 British Standard Time. If you do enjoy my videos, please make sure you engage with them in some way. A like, a comment, a share goes such a long way, pushes my videos out and tells YouTube that people actually enjoy my content, so they should show it to more people. But that is it for this video. Be a good person, don't be a bad person, stay safe, look after each other, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!